This is the Reporter's Notebook, hosted by Elaine Shane.
Welcome to this entry in the DTN Reporter's Notebook. DTN Markets Editor Katie Misick joins us today. We're looking at the results of the DTN, the Progressive Farmer Ag Confidence Index. Katie, let's give a little bit of background first, I guess, on how do you determine this index?
Well, DTN and the Progressive Farmer have been conducting this survey since April of 2010. And for farmers, we poll 500 farmers and basically ask them how to rate their input prices. Are they good, bad, or normal? And ask the same thing about net income, good, bad, or normal. And then we try and gauge their expectations for a year ahead by saying, do you expect it to be better, worse, or the same?
So let's look at producers first. What were some of the highlights you saw there, and how does that compare to the past?
Well, this is the highest pre-harvest survey as far as optimism goes among farmers, which might seem a little counterintuitive, but it's especially high when you compare it to last year pre-harvest, when farmers were going into such a drought-stricken year and they were really dismayed about what their yields would be. They had a lot of questions about crop insurance. And this year they're going into it, while there's still some variability about crops, they've got a better idea of what their income will be. They've got a crop to put in the bin, so they've got something to sell. And so farmers are feeling pretty good on an overall scale. When you break it down and look at, let's start with input prices. Most farmers are starting to say that they're seeing prices level off. They're calling them good or normal and expect them to get better or stay the same. They're the fewest number of farmers in our survey saying that they expect them to get worse next year, which is interesting. And what we found when we interviewed some of those farmers afterwards is that they're really thinking about fertilizer prices, and some of them are expecting those to come down this year. On the income side, a lot of farmers, 50% of them actually, said that their farm income right now is expected to be normal. But USDA forecasts that this will be the second highest year for farm income. So what I think that shows is that they're going to be earning that income in a much more typical normal way. They're not going to be relying on, say, crop insurance payments as much, although there will be some. They're going to have a crop to put in storage, and they'll be able to market in a more normal sense.
What about ag businesses? What were some of the highlights there? Did you see that same sort of optimism?
It was the first very optimistic reading for August in the agribusinesses, especially when you compare it to last year this time when they had a very pessimistic rating. To give you an idea, the index value came in at 108.6 for businesses, where 100's considered neutral. Anything above it's optimistic and below it's pessimistic. Last August, that rating came in at 93.3. The businesses were really worried they weren't going to have any bushels to sell. They weren't going to be able to sell fertilizer or chemicals in the upcoming year. And what we saw was that they had the early spring recharge. Farmers went out and they bought some herbicides. They invested a little bit more in the crop. And a lot of businesses are feeling pretty good about what's going on right now.
You touched a bit on why you think you might have seen some of these results. What are some of the other reasons, perhaps, that you've seen some of the trends with both the farmers as well as the agribusinesses?
The index is very comparative. It asks, how it compares to last year, what you expect in the future, and so you have to look at it from sort of a year-to-year basis. What's changed? We've seen a few other fluctuations as far in different regions of the data. Livestock producers were much more optimistic last year than this year, and part of that probably is sort of the ongoing drought situation. Last year, a lot of cattlemen were thinking, okay, maybe we can rebuild our herds if we get rain, and they didn't quite get rain or enough of it. So there's some rebuilding going on, a little bit of tempering of expectations there. Across, the Midwest, the Southeast, and the Southwest, everything's still pretty optimistic. That's all kind of come together, and in the past there have been some pretty big variations among those regions.
That's what I was wondering, is how much do you see geography playing a role in the results?
In the Southeast, I always find it interesting because they've got one of the highest ratings of their present situation, of what things look like right now, and one of the most pessimistic readings of what they expect it to be like next year. And we talked to a cotton farmer from Georgia, cotton and peanuts, and he's very nervous about the world markets for those crops because cotton has become such a volatile market, especially with China owning half of the world's reserves. And if they stop buying, prices could go really low. He also says if he gets a good peanut contract, he'll take that above anything else. So there's a little bit more variability in southeastern crops and versus some other regions.
What were some of the other anecdotes you might have heard as you've been making phone calls to some of the people that might have been taking part in the poll?
You know, one of them was from a cattleman in Byers, Texas, who was a very kind gentleman, but he said that he wanted to really rebuild his herd. But his wheat crop was average to below average, and his pastures were still kind of burnt up. He has enough water for his cattle, but for his cow-calf and his stocker operation, it's kind of hard to do a lot without a good grass stand. And so he expanded and bought a few more bred cows this spring, but he wants to do more and really can't, partially because of the high cattle prices. A bred cow that he's looking at would go for $1,500 to $2,000. So it's challenging economics to break through that wall and really get him to be able to expand his herd again.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Elaine.
You can find more on what happened with the Ag Confidence Index by going to the link on your screen at this moment. With Katie Misick, I'm Elaine Shane, and that's been today's entry in the DTN Reporter's Notebook. Thanks for joining us.
This has been the Reporter's Notebook from the DTN Progressive Farmer Newsroom.